everyone, and welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast. My name is Andy Spiteri, joined by Dakota Lasky.
Yep.
Dak, you were on the ice today. How you doing?
I was, man. Yeah, like I was saying before the show, I am exhausted. I am so out of shape. I am miserably, embarrassingly out of shape. I was able to... Well, actually, yesterday I went out and got all new hockey equipment. I play goalie, ice hockey, and it was the first time I played any kind of hockey in almost a decade and a half. Like, it's been an incredibly long time. The last time I played was pretty much like ninth grade or so in high school. So like I'm 28 now. It's been an incredibly long time. It was awesome. It was so good to be out there again. I can't wait to go out again and play as soon as possible. But yeah, I am so out of shape. I'm so exhausted. I went down for too many shots. I mean, for those who don't know hockey, I guess they're, you have goalies who are more stand-up goalies. Goalies that go to their knees a little bit more. Goalies like to flop. I'm a goalie that likes to go down and flop a lot and go down and like to their knees and go for saves and dives. So like when you're wearing 40 pounds of pads, you get tired real quick. And I haven't been doing it for a while. Yeah, like back in the day, I could do that 3 periods of play, no problem. 10 minutes of this today, I was beat and I'm still sore as hell, but it was great. I'm gonna hit the treadmill.
Dude, it's gonna be worse tomorrow too.
Whew, yeah. I'm gonna get some rest, but it was awesome. It was great to be back out there.
Oh, I miss playing floor hockey. Before COVID started, I was playing once a week, and that kind of got the kibosh now. But I think that they are ramping back up for the winter season, so we're gonna try and get in on that action. But I'm already not looking forward to that. Like literally, I was telling you, when I first started floor hockey, I also probably hadn't played in forever, and so I did a 45-second shift. I'm a forward, and came back and almost threw up. It was nasty stuff. But that's it's always good to feel because I'm Canadian, so obviously I like hockey, but I always love meeting my American pals who are into hockey too. So I always like to see that.
Yeah, I mean, you should. I hopefully we can get you to skate one day, my man, because as a Canadian, you should be able to skate.
Well, I was telling Dak earlier, so I play floor hockey because I'm not good at skating at all. I can do it. It's just I'm not very good at it. I also get winded way easier and get shin splints, mad shin splints whenever I put on skates. So yeah, I can do it, but it's an ugly scene. I'll tell you that.
See, that's why I like playing goalie, because you're just chilling. I don't gotta skate like forwards do. So that's my kind of position. But I gotta play some floor hockey. We don't have too much of that down here. It's if you're gonna play hockey, it's gonna be ice or roller, I guess. But I love me some floor hockey as well. So that's good. You're getting out there when you can. I hope you can get back into it, because I was really hyped to get back into hockey.
Yeah, well, the leagues are open now. It's just kind of convincing all of our former teammates to get the band back together and go ahead and do it. But and that's the thing too, is finding a goalie is so tough. It's really tough to find a goalie, and not only a goalie, but a good goalie, right? So that's the toughest thing about playing, I think, any kind of hockey, floor hockey, roller hockey, ice hockey, whatever, is finding a quality goalie. So yeah, that's the search is on, and we have until January, I guess. But we have time today to answer some Metroid Dread questions. To be honest, we tasked everybody with asking us Metroid Dread questions, and I would classify this more as just a general Metroid AMA rather than Metroid Dread specific. There were some Metroid Dread questions, but there were, I think, just as many questions about the Metroid series in general, which is fine with me. Which is great with me. But we have a ton of questions. We asked on Twitter, we asked on Discord. We'll try and get to them all. I think if we're efficient, Dak, I think we might be able to do it. So let's not dilly-dally. Let's not beat around the bush. Let's just get right into the action. And let's start off with Colin Bartle, who asks a question on Twitter. Metroid to me is about exploration. The Shine Spark puzzles are about complex button manipulation. It is a different game that requires different skills, which can make tough areas like in Zero Mission to frustrate huge Metroid fans. Do Shine Spark puzzles fit in Metroid?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I think that they totally do, and I think that the distinction is that almost every complicated Shine Spark puzzle is optional. So
Yeah.
like you don't have to do them. However, like I feel like so Colin says that Shine Spark puzzles are complex button manipulation, and I don't know that that's true necessarily. Like, yes, you do have to input the buttons, but it's more so about the terrain and like knowing how to manipulate the environment around you, which is kind of an extension, I feel like, of what a general Metroid game is all about. So I mean, of course you've heard me talk on the show about how much I love Shine Spark puzzles, so like
Hmm.
I think that they're so great. I love them, but I can understand why they're not everyone's cup of tea. But that being said, they are optional, so yeah, I think they totally fit.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think Metroid's not just about the exploration. It's many things, and one of the things it is certainly a test of technical skill in some ways. In some games, Metroid games really give the option to test your sequence breaking, test your technical ability in controlling Samus. So I think that's part of the package, and like you said, it's optional. So it's not something that's like, oh, if you don't know how to do this, then you're missing out on some of the game. I mean, I guess in a way you kind of are, but you're not missing out on like the main core of the game. It's something extra. It's like more end game. It's something that allows you to build upon your experience. It's not necessarily a fundamental part of it, which I think is fine. And
Yeah.
ultimately, I think it's good to have those things that test your skill, that reward people who put more time into the game, because those are the kinds of people who are going to, practice those tricks and practice those kind of, solutions to the puzzles. So I think having that kind of test and reward kind of system there is good. I like, technical parts of Metroid. I mean, even in older Metroid games, I still think that's a part of the reason why I like Metroid is kind of those I don't know, just moments of Metroid gameplay where they aren't necessarily easier, medium difficulty. It tests you a little bit. It puts you, it requires you to maybe practice a little bit too, which I think is totally okay in a game like this. So yeah, I definitely think they have a place, and I think in Dread specifically, they're implemented pretty well.
Yeah, really well. And like we were talking about last week with the boss battles, like there's just something so satisfying about doing something that's difficult and pulling it off. Like getting that secret scene in Metroid Fusion is just so satisfying, right? And it's because you have to do these insane shine sparks to get there. So yeah, I think that they definitely have their place and definitely belong. Okay, so Thomas has a question over on Twitter, and this is a great question actually. So he says, regarding Kraid's appearance in Metroid Dread, do you think Kraid is just a species that exists on multiple planets? It would make sense since he appears in the original and Zero Mission, and again in Super, and it would make sense why there's a baby Kraid rather in Super Metroid. Thoughts? You know what? That I could buy into that theory. I mean, because you do see like the mini baby Kraid before you fight real Kraid in Super Metroid, and there's like all these eggs around here, and maybe it's kind of inferred that there are key hunters coming out of those eggs, but maybe it's little Kraids. Not the worst theory, or like I could see that being plausible. I think kind of like what we were talking about last week. For me, it doesn't necessarily matter. Kraid is just Kraid, and he shows up, and it was fan service and whatever. But yeah, I think that could be a cool way to explain maybe or justify what the heck he's doing on ZDR.
I got into this a little bit over the past week in like the Discord server on Twitter and whatnot. I still don't think it really explains anything or like rationalizes it, because even if there are multiple Kraids, I still go back to a why Kraid? Like Kraid's pretty useless. It's still cool to have him, and I'm not losing sleep over that. And honestly, I think it makes sense that Kraid is comes from a species of things. There isn't just one Kraid. Like it's clearly essentially a creature that likely there are many of. I think really in most cases, a lot of enemies or types of enemies probably have or come from a species. Maybe Ridley might even come from a species. I mean, technically, if you're talking about the manga, I think he does. But in the games, you could speculate there might be more than one Ridley or whatever. Even though personally, I like I guess the conceit that there only is one Ridley, but whatever. I think in a series like Metroid, especially a sci-fi series, it makes sense that maybe there is more than one Kraid. It comes from a creature, or species or whatever. Personally, I don't think that, like I said, doesn't really change how I feel about how Kraid shows up in Dread, and doesn't really justify it entirely. But I can see that. I just don't think it has a major impact on how I feel about his presentation.
Yeah, fair enough. Corey Cooper has a question here. Do you actually think Quiet Robe's final gift to Samus was the Chozo being able to resist the X influence, or do you think the X realized that if I'm to carry on in any way, I have to give myself up? I don't know if I
That was
understand
my
like.
interpretation of it. Yeah, I don't know, cause like I so wait, they're saying that the. Can you say this question again? Because I
Well,
almost.
I was gonna say I don't understand like the layout of the question, I guess, because it's important to know like Quiet Robe died, right? Like
Yeah.
he died in that one scene, and the X that we see is just an X parasite. Like it's not Quiet Robe in any way, so it is just an X parasite in much the same vein that the SAX was. So yeah, I don't know. Like I mean, Quiet Robe's final gift, like he doesn't really have a final gift, right? Because he died. Like that was an X version of Quiet Robe on the ship, but it did just kind of allow Samus to absorb it. And I guess potentially you could say that maybe it allowed Samus to absorb it to get rid of spoilers here, everybody. To get rid of Samus's Metroid suit, because as soon as Samus does absorb that X parasite, the Metroid suit is gone. So perhaps that was its motivation, but I don't think that there is a ton that was put in, like a ton of thought put into that scene, if I'm being honest.
Well, I mean, my interpretation of it was, yeah, that it is an X parasite. It isn't Quiet Robe, but like because it is based on Quiet Robe, I think a part of his consciousness had some influence on the X's behavior, but it's still the X parasite. It's just like that little kind of part of Quiet Beak or Quiet Robe, whatever. Um, this game's names. Still not used to it. You know what I'm saying though? Like I felt like that was more of it. Like because it's based so much on the
Right.
DNA and the information that comes from what the host. I think it was just like that consciousness and that kind of influence broke out for a little bit through that X and overrode like the X's natural behavior. I didn't really see it as like the X intentionally doing it, or yeah, I that was my interpretation of it, which I don't know if that makes sense, but I think you kind of understand where I'm getting at.
Well, yeah, I feel like it might because I mean, Quiet Robe X kind of does that little bow before it
Yeah.
like assimilates itself into Samus. So yeah, I can see that. All right, Jan 1988 says, "Hey guys, Metroid Dread is my first Metroid experience. How's the music in Metroid Dread? Is it an interesting part of the game for you guys?" I don't think anybody is going to go ahead and say that the music is a strong point in Metroid Dread. I think that it's pretty decent, and it grows on me the more that I play Metroid Dread. I don't think it's as it's not in the same league as a lot of the Metroid Prime games or Super Metroid or AM2R or anything like that. But I mean, it's solid. It's not the best that Metroid has to offer, though. I don't think you'd find anybody willing to say that.
Yeah, it was a bit disappointing because when you think of Metroid, you think of like the amazing soundtrack. I mean, I'll give props to Other M for saying like it has some good music on it, like so even in like the worst Metroid games, you can find some good music a lot of the time. So it is a bit disappointing for me that Dread really doesn't have any memorable tracks. And like I said when we talked about this game previously on previous episodes, I feel like so much of the music just is like bogged down by a lot of other stuff, or there's too much going on, and it doesn't really stick in your head. And I don't know, it felt a lot of it kind of blended together for me. When I go back to think of some of my favorite Metroid games, there are so many standout themes and arrangements and different versions of songs that are so distinct and individual. And I didn't get that from Metroid Dread. So I would definitely say it's one of the weaker points of the game. But it's certainly overshadowed by like its exceptional gameplay, which is the more important part.
All right, Silver has a question here, and Silver might have just answered the question for me because their answer is
Okay.
close to mine. What's your favorite power up in the game? Which was the most disappointing? My favorite is the Storm Missile, and the most disappointing is the Spin Boost since you get the space jump 20 seconds later. Uh, yeah, I think that the spin boost, the double jump, was pretty unnecessary. Definitely because you get the space jump like so quickly after. The only time that the spin jump was kind of cool, well, actually no, I take that back. It wasn't even cool underwater. So yeah, that one was a little bit lame. Favorite power up, I would say that I really liked. It's not a new power up, but I like that they add the like the slide and jumping to the Shine Spark. I thought that really changed the dynamic of Shine Spark. And Storm Missile was awesome, but I think that Cross Bomb was really cool too, just because it like saves you time, like individually bombing a bunch of bricks. So I think probably Shine Spark, but the other two are definitely noteworthy as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the Shine Spark part. But my favorite, absolutely the Flash Shift. I mean, far and away, it's the Flash Shift. Give me an air dash in Metroid, and I got it. So it's one of my favorite abilities or whatever in any Metroid game. Period. I hope we get more of it. It is so awesome. It makes the game feel like a completely different kind of Metroid game, and it really does. Alongside the slide and all the different other features and whatnot that Samus gets. So the Flash Shift is it's fast, it's fun, it's satisfying. It's very free and doesn't have like a crazy limit to it, but it feels balanced. I absolutely love the Flash Shift, and I love that you get it early in the game, so you get to use it pretty much the whole time. Absolutely love the Flash Shift. One of the best things that's been added to Metroid in such a long time, maybe since the counter or whatever. Least favorite or worst in Dread? Yeah, I mean the spin jump. You're pretty much right on that. It's pretty much serves no, not much of a purpose for not much of a period of time. I really wasn't too wowed by the cross bombs because, like, yeah, it does make things more convenient. But then part of me was like, oh, I wish just morph ball bombs were like this. But I don't know. They weren't crazy to me. I was like, oh, I got multiple bombs now. Like, I don't know. I guess I wouldn't say the worst. I don't know. I think it's probably spin jump. And honestly, I still am not a big fan of how the gravity suit is implemented in this game because of how like Varia doesn't stop the cold and it comes like at a weird time and I take so much time in the water. I wish there were more suits in this game that were a little more creative instead of just the Varia power or power Varia gravity. The only cool suit we get is in the game for like 2 seconds, and then you lose it. So like that was kind of a bummer. But I don't think there are any abilities or anything that really stood out to me as like the absolute worst or like, oh, I wish this wasn't in the game. The spin jump maybe seems a bit superfluous, but other than that, yeah, I think a lot of the additions in this game, Flash Shift, the Storm Missile, like the slide, all that kind of stuff, are really cool additions. Even like, the stealth ability is really cool too. So yeah, I think overall some cool additions.
Very underrated too, but I also wanted to give a quick shout out. I can't remember if I did or not, but I love that this game kind of went the Metroid Fusion route of like when you get the super missile, it just combines with like the regular missile, and they're not two separate things. That's such. I was just like hallelujah when that happened. So that is another underrated favorite as well. Okay, Hiba Hussein has a question. Where would you rank Dread in terms of story? I know Dak might disagree, but I think it's one of the strongest. I think I agree, actually. I like the narrative. Metroid just in general tells such simple stories but they're told simply but effectively. So that I think that each game in its own way is like really, really strong. And actually, to me, I feel like the ones that try and like deliver, I guess, on the story, like a Metroid Other M, to a much lesser extent, a Metroid Fusion, are the ones that I'm just kind of like, a little bit too. But I think that this was a really strong story. It would be in the upper echelon, I think, for me.
Overall, I really don't think the Dread story is that bad. Obviously, my expectations aside, because I don't want to get into that again. I think my major problems with the story is kind of how some plot elements are told and feel a bit abrupt or rushed or don't have the weight I was expecting. There's really no resolution to the story. And like Fusion, it does have some really long cutscenes. I'm like, all right, let's go. But in Fusion, I was really engrossed and engaged in the story, so I didn't mind it as much. In this game, I was like mashing, like, all right, I don't care. Some plot points kind of come and go and don't seem to really be followed up upon. And a lot of elements in this game are also introduced completely new to this game, where I felt like I was expecting more, I don't know, less new elements that are introduced and then, gone in this game, like Raven Beak, for example. So, yeah, I wouldn't put it above the Prime games or Fusion or anything like that, but there are some really awesome moments in this story. I think there's some really cool story ideas. I think they do some overall, for the most part, a pretty solid job of setups and payoffs. But that's, again, aside from my thoughts on expectations and following up from Fusion. Like, just thinking about it as a standalone game, I think the story's pretty fine and sufficient. Especially if you're a new Metroid fan, it's fine and totally good. I think it just, I personally had different expectations for it, so it certainly isn't a favorite of mine. As a standalone Metroid game, though, I think it probably ranks pretty high, but again, I'd put the Prime games and Fusion above it.
Yeah, well, and I mean, you're not the only one that felt that way, right? I think that that's a valid criticism to have for the story of Metroid Dread, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, Jay has a couple questions for us here. His first question: if you could add DLC free or paid suits aside from, he calls it the watermelon suit. That's a creative way to give a
Watermelon
spoiler
suit.
free version of
Okay.
that suit.
All right. All right.
What other suits would you like to add? Well, I mean, I think that the fusion suit makes sense, right? Because it's you got the X in this game, and this is the sequel to that.
Yep.
So yeah, definitely that suit. I don't know, like maybe the fusion suit is the obvious one. I feel like maybe like there could have been like some kind of like ME suit or something like that. That could have been kind of fun. Obviously, it would have like it would just be cosmetic. It wouldn't have any bearing on the story. But yeah, I mean, really, like you could take your pick of any. Like it'd be cool to play in the light suit. It'd be cool to play in the Phazon suit.
I was gonna say that.
Well, I think if you're adding DLC suits and you move away from like, okay, this has to make sense in the context of the story, then the world is your oyster, really.
Exactly. That's the thing. They really shouldn't think of it as limiting it at all. And Mercury Steam already has no problem kind of bringing in elements from the Prime games into the 2D Metroids, like we saw in Samus Returns. So I think it would be cool. Yeah, the light suit, dark suit, Phazon suit. I mean, even give me the Prime 3 suits. Like, give me any suit from the Prime games or previous games. Except Other M, but that doesn't really have anything. So yeah, I really go all out if they're gonna do that. Honestly, the thing is that, like you said, it would be purely cosmetic, so it wouldn't have any impact in the game. And I wish, excuse me, I wish the game had more creative suits or different suits that did have an impact on the game. So if there was DLC, I'd kind of hope it would be like a post story mission or a boss rush mode or something like that. But if we're talking purely cosmetics, I'd rather them go wild. Like, come up with any idea, take from the Prime games, take from the previous games, come up with new stuff. Let me use the watermelon suit whenever. I think Minneapolis was also talking recently about that suit, and he said it was a Skyrim suit, so I like calling it that. And yeah, I'm totally
awesome.
down for. That's what I'm saying. I mean, he was like, I don't want it in the entire game. Though I was like, nah, I want that for an entire game. And Minneapolis King was like, nah, I just want it for a little bit. I'm like, give me that aesthetic. I love the Eldritch, like crazy, like abstract monstrous suit she has. Give me some more stuff like that. I'm totally down for those abstract concept suits.
You know what would be the most badass suit ever? It would never happen because it'd be a licensing nightmare. But like, imagine if Samus got like a xenomorph suit. Oh my god, that'd be so cool.
Or a Ridley suit.
That'd be
Just give her
so
a Ridley
cool.
suit. Something like that. Or a Kraid suit, like maybe suits based on some of her major enemies or something. That'd be cool. That may be a cool idea.
All right, speaking of Ridley, Jay's next question. Did you guys think that the final boss would turn into some kind of Ridley when the purple X appeared? That never even crossed my mind, actually.
Yeah.
And so, by the way, we were talking about this last week when we were talking about Raven Beak X. That totally is Kraid at the end.
Yeah.
When Raven Beak turns into that X, like that's Kraid. You can see it. His body is Kraid. So if anything, I was like, all right, Big Daddy Kraid is coming back for one last showdown.
It's funny because now I'm like, so like, was that Ravenbeak's ultimate plan to become like a Kraid morph or something, like in Dune where they just become like a big worm? He's like a big Kraid or something, which I'm like, okay. Yeah, I did not at all expect Ridley in this game. Once I got into the game, whether or not Ridley was in the game really didn't like come up in my mind. I did think that there was going to be a Ridley Emmy. I did think they were building one in the background of one of those Emmy zones like I talked about. But like when I got to the end of the game, it didn't occur to me that it would be Ridley. And as a huge Ridley fan, I think that speaks volumes about the game. But yeah, I when I saw the body, I was like, oh, it's Kraid. It's like Kraid X or something. Because that would have been cool if like if Kraid came back at the end. I was like, all right, like let me see a full Kraid battle right here where like they go really wild with it. Like that's what I really wanted from the original boss battle. And then it was like another like Emmy like Omega Cannon moment or whatever. Or like it was the Hyper Beam, I guess. But and like Raven Kraid, that's definitely Kraid's body because it doesn't look like the Corpius body.
It 100% is Kraid's body. Yeah.
So I don't understand that, but that's one thing. I'm like at that point, I'm like I already have so many other questions. I'm not even gonna touch that. But I didn't expect Ridley. I did expect Kraid.
All right, one last one from Twitter, then we'll move over to Discord. This is from Logan. Do you think Prime 4 will put a bigger emphasis on tight combat like Dread did? How do you see actions like the melee counter or finishing moves being implemented into a first-person shooter? So I think that, in a sense, Metroid Prime 3 introduced finishing moves a little bit, and like where you could grapple like the enemies and like rip them apart. I think that something like that could definitely continue forward with like finishing moves. I don't know about counters. Maybe it's not as hard as we make it out to be, and like you could just input a button and like it switches to a third person view, and like you can mash him, or maybe it doesn't switch at all, and it just you can see Samus's arm come up in front of her and like punch away an enemy or something like that. I don't know, but I hope that it is implemented somehow in the Prime games for sure.
Yeah, I can definitely see finishers being implemented because even though the games are in first person, they do already take you out of first person for like Morph Ball, for example, or Screw Attack or whatever. So I don't think it necessarily breaks that. I mean, it in a way it does break immersion, but like I don't think it's a substantial part. If anyone plays, I'm gonna bring up Destiny again, my favorite game right now. If anyone loves Destiny, let me know. That game also has finishers. If someone gets low, a little like symbol goes up above them. You can go and do a finisher, and that's really cool. And that does bring you out of third person as well, or into third person. I can definitely see finishers being implemented, like absolutely. And I would expect a lot of like modern FPS elements being brought into the Prime games.
Even in Doom.
Yeah.
Like Doom, you can rip people apart. I think you could totally do that.
100%. I was literally about to say, like, Doom has those same kind of finishers. And even, like, other M's kind of finishers. Like, let her get acrobatic. I want to suplex a space pirate. I'm totally down. A melee counter, yeah, that would be cool. Because that's like an element that you don't see too much in an FPS. Like, you can get shield, sure, but, like, an actual, like, timed counter. I'd be interested to see how they pull it off, because I do expect Samus to have like a general melee attack. Like I'm expecting to be able to walk up to someone and hit them with my arm cannon, and that'll be very satisfying, and I cannot wait to do that. How they would implement a melee counter, like, yeah, it could be similar to how the finisher works, or like a timed button press, or maybe it is just something like you said where you just throw up the other arm real quick, and it's like a quick block, and maybe it stuns them and you can capitalize off of that. I could see them doing it. I think Retro could definitely handle it, and I do think things like that will make their way into Prime 4, because it's going to be, yeah, like it's certainly going to be a tight gameplay experience. I think they're absolutely going to evolve, like build upon what the previous games had, what FPS games have done for the past decade. And I think now that they've seen like, oh, this is like the standard that like Dread has set for 2D Metroid, I definitely think they're going to try to set a new standard for Prime games with Metroid Prime 4.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so let's switch over to Discord. Thank you guys for the questions on Twitter. This is from Miyasoko. We're going to go fast here because we got a lot of questions. So thank you, everyone, for asking. Mia asks, if Mercury Steam remade Zero Mission, would you like them to put in the Aeon abilities in the slide? If so, would you like them to reorder what collective power-ups you get? What would be your preferred order of the power-ups? So first of all, Zero Mission is probably never going to get remade, which is fine, because I think that it's like, as long as it's accessible, it's a perfectly playable game right now. I've talked before, I feel like there are some things in Fusion that can be improved upon, but I think generally speaking, like Zero Mission is pretty solid in its current form. However, I think that if you were to remake any 2D Metroid game, if it's Super Metroid, if it's Metroid Fusion, if it's Zero Mission, whatever, you absolutely have to add in the slide. You have to add in the melee counter. You have you have to add in all of these other stuff, because like after playing Dread, like I can't go back to not having those particular things, right? And like you'd have to rejig the world a little bit. I'm thinking in Super Metroid, there are some areas where you would need to maybe block off that area if you had the slide, but not the morph ball yet. But my expectation, if they ever remade any 2D Metroid game, is that it plays fairly identically to Super Metroid. Or to Super Metroid, to Metroid Dread, sorry.
Your bias is showing.
Well, that is. I am biased, that's for sure.
That's not a bad bias to have. Yeah, I 100% agree. I think Zero Mission is fine as it is, but if you are going to remake it, I think you could probably add most, but not all of those things. I don't think like the Aeon abilities need to be added. Maybe they could do something cool, like specific for Zero Mission, but like stuff like the slide, absolutely you gotta have. Melee counters, absolutely gotta have. Stuff like that where like it doesn't change the original experience too much, but it still has those new Metroid elements that people would come to expect after playing Dread. Like I think the Aeon abilities, maybe not keep those, but everything else I would throw those in. But like you said, I think we're gonna Fusion and Super are gonna be the ones that would be remade next. Zero Mission is a classic. As you said, as long as it's accessible, I think it's fine. But hey, let me slide a melee counter if I'm going to play it again.
Yeah, and maybe to clarify a position really quick, we don't have to call them like Aeon specifically, but I think
Yeah.
like especially in like Super Metroid, like you have to have the scan pulse in there. Like I know that you can get the X-ray scope, but like I could actually just see if you remade that game, just get rid of the X-ray scope and replace it with the scan pulse.
Okay,
And
yeah, I
like
could see
I
that.
think that it would be hard to go back after having like the flash shift. It's hard to go back
Mm.
without that, you know.
Yeah,
So yeah,
I agree.
certain Aeon abilities I feel like should be there to stay.
Yeah, I'm down with that.
Okay, Accursed Hunter, Big Griffin has a question. Where would Metroid Dread's final boss place on your overall final boss ranking? So we determined last week that the Raven Beak fight was the best fight, or it topped our list anyways, of boss fights in Metroid Dread. Man, I think that it would be up there for
Yep.
final bosses in Metroid. I mean, like, Proteus Ridley comes to mind as an awesome final boss in Samus Returns. Um, I think that the Metroid Prime boss is really
Yes.
solid. I think that like the Mother Brain fight in Super Metroid is good, but it's more of a story fight. Like the real final fight of that game, I've always felt like is Ridley. So I don't think I would put that one in there. Zero Mission, I don't think had strong final bosses. I don't think that Fusion did. It's kind of the same thing as Super. It was like more of a story fight. The fight with the SAX was good, but Omega was kind of eh. So I think that Raven Beak would be, I mean, at least in the top three, maybe the top two, maybe one. I don't know. That's we should dive into this maybe on an episode.
I agree. I think we should. I think we should take like maybe Ravenbeak and the Emmys and be like, hey, how do these stack up against everything else? Yeah, Ravenbeak is definitely up there. Certainly, like as a full character, and then as a full boss like fight package, absolutely one of the best in Metroid. I have a soft spot for Metroid Prime and Prime. I just think like that whole Impact Crater sequence is magnificent, especially following my favorite Ridley fight of all time. So it's hard to beat that, and I think the Prime games overall have like really strong bosses. But I think Ravenbeak is like, I mean, might be like one of the best 2D Metroid bosses, period, if not the best. So like immediately I'm like, okay, like Ravenbeak is certainly up there for 2D Metroids, and as a result, rivals Prime bosses, I think, in a way too. So yeah, absolutely one of the best. Like it was intense, it was fun, it was really well designed from a gameplay perspective, from a graphics and setting and sound perspective. There's some crazy moments in the fight, like bar none. So yeah, it's one of the most memorable boss fights of any Metroid game. I would absolutely rank it high.
So Griff has one more question here that I thought was interesting, and we might not have to wait long to see the answer to this question. Now that you've had time with Metroid Dread, how does it fare as a potential Game of the Year candidate? What award categories could Dread qualify for / win? What other games that you've played this year would qualify as Game of the Year material? So I think that as we record today, the Game Awards are about a month away. I think they're December 9th. And I think that there's
Wow.
a real chance that like Metroid Dread could, be a contender or be a player in that field. I mean, the field is weak this year, right? Like it's a very 2021 was a very light year in terms of like new games, really. The year 2022 is absolutely stacked, and this year was a little bit barren. But I think Metroid Dread benefits from that. So I could see it, if like the IGNs or the Game Awards of the worlds are doing like specific Nintendo Switch Game of the Years, I think that Metroid Dread is like your game, right? Like I just think that it is. If I think that I could realistically see Metroid hanging in with like the Forzas and the Resident Evil Villages of 2021 to maybe get nominated for like the Game Awards Game of the Year. I think I could realistically see that.
Yeah, I can too, actually. I think it has the potential to be a candidate for overall game of the year. Like when I'm thinking of 2021, I mean, Halo's not out yet, but I guarantee it's going to be probably mentioned in some way, even if it's not that great. Forza, like you said, there was Deathloop, which was received pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Ratchet and Clank also came out this year. And I've actually heard that the new Guardians of the Galaxy game is pretty solid. You have Back for Blood, you have Psychonauts 2. One of my
Returnal,
favorites,
a lot of people talking
yeah,
about that.
Returnal. One of my
Yeah.
favorites, Age of Empires 4, which I don't think would be nominated, but still great to see it back. And then you have like Call of Duty and Battlefield, which might just make their way in there somehow, you know? Even at Bowser's Fury, and you talk about Nintendo games, but Bowser's Fury came out, the Super Mario 3D World expansion or whatever. That was received pretty well too. So I actually don't think the competition is that light this year. I think it's surprising. Like now that I'm obviously did a Google search and don't know all these games off the top of my head. After looking at more of these games, I actually think the crowd is pretty decent. It's not a best of the decade for sure, or last 10 years anything, but I think Dread has some competition. If there, I don't know what the categories are for Game Awards really off the top of my head. So like if there is like an action adventure or 2D game category, I think Metroid Dread probably has that in the bag. As overall game of the year, I think it absolutely will be a runner. I think it might end up showing up as a candidate or one of the choices, but I don't think it has an absolute guaranteed win. There are a lot of pretty solid games this year, but I think I have high hopes for it. I do think it'll do really well at Game Awards.
I just think that if it got in on that conversation, because I think there's usually 5 games nominated, I think I could see it being one of the 5 games. If I was a betting man and had to pick who I think someone like the Game Awards would crown Game of the Year, I would put my money on Forza.
Really?
Or Resident Evil.
I was gonna say like Ratchet and Clank or something like that. That's a Game Awards game right there.
Nah, I feel like it would either be Village or it would be Forza, but who knows? IGN I think is definitely going to go Forza.
It looks beautiful.
Yeah, like I mean, it does. It looks great. I'm just not, that's not really my cup of tea. But I mean, to be fair, I've never tried Forza either, so maybe I would like it if
you should try it out, man. It's Forza. I've been playing Forza since Forza 3 back in the day on the Xbox 360. Awesome games. Really great driving simulators and beautiful games. So yeah, I definitely recommend. But I don't know. It's gonna be a hard battle. I do agree. I think it has a chance though. I think we'll see it as one of those big like, yeah. It's definitely a Game Awards game. I agree.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're going to like this question. This is from DW Terabyte. They ask, the story of Dread does feel like it supports the idea for something that should have happened for Metroid 6. More than likely, I am grasping at straws, but something did occur and it would be hard-pressed to find. Could there be any evidence that Raven Beak had a hand in the operation of the BSL station in which he had humans and clones that were made to do his bidding to facilitate the story of fusion? Buddy.
Wow.
I'm sorry, man. It's I understand why like you and like you Dak are a little left wanting with the story of Dread because it clearly doesn't emphasize the portion of like the Galactic Federation's influence on the story of Metroid Fusion. It emphasizes the X and it emphasizes the Metroid part of that. But yeah, man, I think that might be reaching just a bit.
I'm not gonna lie. I would really hope that's not the case because that would make it worse. if someone told me, "Oh, actually, it was all planned from the beginning by this guy I just heard of in this game," I'd be like, "Screw you, buddy. I'm done with this game." Yeah, I mean, there are tons of like wild theories like that. I don't really think there's anything to support it, and I mean that's one of the things about Dread is that like all of a sudden this Raven Beak guy has been around this whole time, I guess, and now he's shown up. He hasn't shown up previously, but he shows up now. Or how there's like these 2 major tribes that I've never heard of before, but they're in Dread. Yeah, I think Fusion was good. It was great. I love Fusion. Let's stop other games trying to screw with it. Like Other M tried to screw with it and ruin part of it. And this game is like let's keep it to itself in that way. Yeah, I wish there was more Federation stuff. I don't think I need Raven Beak to be the mastermind behind it all to make me feel better or make it be good. So, at this point, I kind of accepted it. I mean, it's been a month, right? Like, I've kind of accepted it. It is what it is. And, I kind of have to live with that. So, yeah, I do agree, though, that this story is Metroid 6. Like, it would be such a good Metroid 6. If they just did the Federation stuff in Metroid 5 and then they did this, it would have been so good. Maybe in another timeline. Maybe another alternate reality.
I think it makes Raven Beak actually look more like a badass to have him not like the mastermind of all of this plot all the time, but like when the game tells you that like the X actually broke out on ZDR and Raven Beak somehow managed to like quarantine them. Mm-hmm. I was just like, okay, that's pretty impressive actually that this dude was able to contain the X and like he was able to take down an Emmy. In my mind, that kind of built him up a little bit more than it would have if he was like the mustache twirling bad guy
I agree.
that was secretly behind everything.
Yeah, like 100% agreed.
Nero has a question. Would you like to see the Chozo end up becoming a recognized fictional language? Is that a thing?
Uh, if it is, I'm not the person to ask. I mean, what isn't Klingon an officially recognized fictional language? I think that's true.
I
So,
feel like the Elvish from Lord of the Rings has got to be in there. You know.
yep.
What are some other fictional?
Those are like the two, the only two I would
Yeah.
guess. That I mean, it's like what is the question? How would we feel if that happened? I mean, it would have no impact on my life. I don't. I mean, there are some really awesome people that are like looked into like the Chozo language and like interpreting it and whatnot. And if you've been in our Discord server, I think that's been shared a little bit. So definitely check that out. That's something that I personally like don't care about. If that was like if it
Yeah.
was recognized, I'd be like, okay, I guess. Learn a real language. Touch grass. That's what I say. No, but I don't know. Yeah, I mean it's cool, I guess. But hey, more Metroid stuff is always cool with me.
Yep. Yep. Fair enough. Let's move on. Minneapolis King has a great question that
There you go.
I'm gonna answer before I even ask his question. So the answer is yes. Do you think Metroid Dread should have a death counter for every game
Yes.
over screen you get? Because I think that'd be brilliant. I mean, yeah, totally,
I
totally should.
I think it should be optional. Like you should be able to like it shouldn't be on by default because I can certainly see how some people might not take that very well. If the game is like mocking them, like 245th death, what are you doing? But I think for people who I don't know, like
Well, hold on, hold on.
I think it might be cool
I
for some
interpreted
people.
this question as like it shows you. You know what? Maybe I just didn't read his question right because my interpretation of this was at the end of the game, once you beat it, it shows you how many times you died.
Okay. I was interpreting
So
it.
actually,
Okay.
reading his question, I don't think that's what he's asking.
Okay.
I don't want to. I don't want to have it in my face every single time I die because I died like
Yeah, that's
an
what I'm
insane
saying.
amount of times. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, oh, every time you die, like this is your 245th death. This is your 246th death. If it was at the end,
When
yeah.
are you going to stop sucking at Metroid Dread?
I think that would be funny though. Like I said, if that was an option, and if the game showed me that every time I died, I would be the type of person that would opt in for that. But yes, I do think that'd be a cool like thing to have for the very end of the game, like as a stat for sure.
Jack Attack has a great question, and we kind of touched on this already, but we can touch on it a little bit more. If there was a Super Metroid remake coming out, what would you want to be changed? Would you want features like the melee counter to be added? So yes, like I said, there can never be a 2D Metroid game again that does not have melee counters or like the slide, like that just or freestyle aiming. That has to be in every Metroid game.
Yep.
It just has to. So for Super Metroid specifically, I think that I mean obviously you know updated graphics, music would be awesome. I think that maybe you could take the opportunity to expand the wrecked ship a little bit in a remake, make it a little bit more of a
That'd be cool.
yeah, just like a bigger area or you know one thing I guess that I would really love as well is to like have and this is just like something I want in 2D Metroid in general, but this would be so cool in Super Metroid is like just to have like scannable lore or like we talked about like you can find like objects that inform you about the world because like
Yeah.
one of the first areas that you get to in Super Metroid is like the ruins of Torian from the NES Metroid and like that would be so cool if like you could get there and like there's like a quick cutscene that showed you like your previous battle or like you could find an item that would activate that cutscene. So something like that. We even talked about before where like it would be really awesome if you could like maybe once you finish Super Metroid you could unlock like a section where you get to play as Ridley and you invade Sarah's space station and you're like going in and fighting people and it can culminate with the Samus boss fight at the end. Like that would be so cool. I would love that.
That reminds me of like in the Paper Mario games where you have those parts where you play as Bowser. I love those
yeah.
parts.
Yeah.
I'm down for stuff like that. Absolutely, I'm totally down. And I think like 2D Metroid, whether they're remakes or new games, I really think the scanning could absolutely work in a 2D Metroid. We saw it work really well, I think, in the Prime 2D, demo. I think that was perfectly executed. I think it doesn't have to be a crazy amount of scans like in Prime, but I think like a small amount just to add a little more depth or potentially
Yeah.
more findable lore. I think would be great, and I really think it's possible, especially now that you have free aim in the 2D Metroids. Like I think you can absolutely iterate on that and add scanning on top of that, and it would work really well. So I'd love to see that.
Yeah, and maybe one last thing to add to Super Metroid. I want to see some better Shine Spark puzzles because there's really not like a ton of great Shine Spark puzzles in the game. And Shine Sparking was obviously pretty new in Super Metroid. In fact, you take damage in that game when you Shine Spark. So, I mean, get rid of that.
Yep.
And yeah, put some cooler Shine Spark puzzles in. And I mean, also to like Super Metroid is, I mean, it's going on 30 years old at this point. So, like, like if we can combine the missiles and the super missiles, that would be great. If we can just like some quality of life changes like that.
Absolutely agreed.
All right, let's keep it going here. Game Worm has a question. What is your favorite discovered sequence break in Metroid Dread? Ooh, there's so many. Like already, it's crazy. I think my favorite, even though I think it's been proven to like not be worth it to speedrunners to do this now, but like my favorite that I was able to do was to get the early bombs and then like go and bomb Kraid. It was just so satisfying to me. So yeah, that was awesome. Yeah, I mean like early gravity suit was really cool to do.
Yeah, took that from me. I was about to say my favorite skip is the early gravity suit because this game gives you the gravity suit way too late. So that sequence break is my all-time favorite in this game.
I'm trying to think of like I actually haven't seen. I know that you can skip Dragaiga and that you can skip. I think you can skip Kraid now too. It's like I haven't actually seen those skips yet, but I would love to learn how to do that. These people are just like just it's like the Matrix, man. They're like Neo bending the Matrix. It's crazy. Crazy what these speedrunners can do.
They put a lot of time and effort into it. I really respect it. It's not an easy job, and it is a grueling one at times. Practicing parts of the game over and over and over again. I have a lot of respect for speedrunners, and it's not easy to do. Not just like technically wise, but like to really discipline yourself and like really become good at speedrunning is not easy. You got to be built different. So I love watching Oats, and I've been a speedrun fan for a while. I love seeing that kind of stuff, and honestly, I feel like every day there's like a new skip discovered or some kind of improved route, and I would love to. I've got to sit down and really give it a go myself. Been watching Void as well from Smash. He's been speedrunning and running Metroid Dread on Twitch, and that's been fun. I love watching all that kind of stuff. I would say, yeah, the early gravity suit and the Dragaiga skip because those solve two issues of mine in the game. So I love those.
Yeah, man, the skill of these players is just like, oh my god, they're so good.
It's awesome.
Albie Truss has a question. Actually, I'm sorry, I skipped ahead. Metroid 35 has a question.
Hey.
Where are the animals?
Yes.
Are they on this ship? Are they chilling somewhere safe?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that maybe they're on the ship. Maybe Samus dropped them off somewhere.
But like show us that, like they were that's another I mean that's like such a like whatever continuity thing, but it's still I don't know, like it's part of the experience. It's nice to have that little bit of follow up. And I like the animals in Fusion. So I was like where'd they go? Like even if Samus dropped them off or left them on the ship, but like at least tell me, show me, like what happened to them? Did she like stop somewhere and they got loose and she's like, "Oh, screw it." Whatever, like and she just kept going, left them at the gas station one time. Like, I don't know. I wish I would like to know. I agree. What happened?
Maybe they're at Samus's house. She just brought him home.
That's the DLC we need. Wild. The DLC we need would go to Samus's house, and it's like Animal Crossing, and you have to take care of her animal pets. I'm down for that.
By the way, all of you Animal Crossing players out there, I know there's a lot of you. If you have a cool Metroid house, make sure that you tweet at us at Omega Metroid Pod. We'd love to see that. Okay, Albie Tress has a question. Samus arrived on ZDR with the various suit but left Fusion fully geared up. Did the suit transition downgrade her? Well, no, Raven Beak downgraded her. He gave her ability amnesia, as we see in the opening cutscene. I am not like I think that this is a sticking point for a lot of fans, but like for me, I'm just like I feel like Samus is either switching or upgrading or changing suits like in between games, so it's not. her showing up with like a different suit than what she had in Fusion, to me was like, okay, like that.
But isn't it the
that's
same
fine.
suit though? I don't know.
Well, I don't know. They don't necessarily explain that.
I wish they could explain it. It's their job to do that job. Explain it to me. Yeah, I mean, I kind of get what they're saying because at the end of Fusion, Samus ends with the Omega suit, right? Like the quote-unquote Omega suit, whatever. It gives her back her old colors, but it's still like the fully powered Fusion suit. And then at the beginning of Dread, before she, like when she's in the ship still, before she even gets the ZDR, if I remember correctly, she is in the Various suit, right? She's not in the Dread suit yet.
Right.
So that would still be a downgrade. She wouldn't be at the Omega suit level anymore. She's at the Various suit level. So there was a downgrade that happened, which I agree. Why did it happen? Why did she show up with a weaker suit for no particular reason? Why did her suit look different? I know they said, oh, well, the suit's going back to its... well, show me that. Or why? Like, why did it have to? I like the Fusion suit. I like the Dread suit, too. But, again, little continuity things, they add up. You know, they add up. Those questions add up. That's another continuity thing for me. I would have liked to, like, I mean, we talked about this before even Dread came out. I was hoping Dread would start with Samus just same power level, like let her go into the first fight with like maxed out or something like that, and then she can get physical amnesia or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I wish I knew the answer to that.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm just built different, but that stuff never bothers me. But I know that you're not alone in your thinking.
Thankfully.
So let's move on to a question from Paul. Quaid asks, what is your biggest expectation for Metroid Prime 4? Well, my expectation is that it rocks.
Yep.
That's it. That's it.
That's it.
You know, is that it's really good.
Yep. I mean, you know, I trust Retro Studios. They have not failed me yet. They have, as far as I'm concerned, a perfect track record. And Metroid Prime 3 completed the trilogy, in my opinion, perfectly. So they can really do whatever with Prime 4. Like, I'm open to anything. I have full confidence in them. I think they're going to surprise us with a really great game. And I agree. My only expectation is that it's going to kick ass. I think it's going to be awesome. So I'm very much looking forward to it. Even though we literally know nothing about it.
Nada.
I am very... I mean, it's the game I'm looking forward to the most. It's not already out, other than like Elden Ring, which I 100% am more looking forward to Metroid Prime 4. But like, that's the game I can't wait.
I'm not really hyped for that game at all, actually.
I'm not a crazy hyped for it. I'm way more hyped for Destiny 2 Witch Queen, which comes out the same week. I'm gonna be playing that. That's gonna be sick. But Elden Ring, I think I'm not wowed by it, but I think it'll be fun. I'm a sucker for exploring big castles and big buildings. So any game that gives me stuff like that, dungeons, raids, whatever, count me in.
Yeah, maybe it's just because I've never played any of like the Souls or Bloodborne or anything like that. But I've heard that I own Bloodborne, actually. I should really get around to playing it.
It looks easier, so that's all I'll say.
So, Paul, just because I know we kind of gave you a lame answer there, we do have 2 episodes that we have. We've kind of talked about what our hopes for Metroid Prime 4. Maybe after playing Metroid or Metroid Dread, we should do a third because I think that could definitely influence some some picks for Metroid Prime 4. Andy from Calgary has a question for Dak. What? Give me a percentage. What do you think the percentage is that you see Metroid Prime 4 at the Game Awards this year? I think I'm sitting at about a 3%.
Yeah, I don't really think it's that likely. I think if they're going to show off Metroid Prime 4, it'll probably be in their own Nintendo Direct or at E3. It just seems like it probably isn't ready yet. And
can you imagine if it was, though?
But if... I mean, that's another... Actually, now I think about another expectation. I can't wait to play Metroid Prime 4 multiplayer. That's what I can't wait for. That we can talk about that. But I don't know. I'm not expecting it at the Game Awards. I would be pleasantly surprised. I would be
stunned.
I would be very stunned. Yeah, I'm keeping my expectations low. I really don't think we're gonna see it. I mean, Dread literally just came out. Like, I still think Nintendo probably wants to give it a little more time and breathing room before they start jumping on the Metroid Prime 4 train, which I feel like they're raring to go. You know, like it's coming soon. But they still got to give Dread some more time in the spotlight, so I don't think we're going to see it.
I feel like the chances that we see Metroid Dread DLC are far greater than we see Metroid Prime 4 at the Game Awards. And I wouldn't say that I think that necessarily is like going to happen either, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
agreed.
Okay, Metroid 35 is another question. How long were y'all stuck in the room? You know what room she's talking about. The room that we talked about.
The David Jaff room? The David room?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's just call it the David room. David's room. I think that I went into the David room, and I looked around and I left because I didn't know where to go. And I kind of schmucked around for a little bit. I got an energy part. I probably ran around Arteria for a little bit, came back, and I just kind of shot the ceiling. And I was like, oh my god, I'm such an idiot. Like, of course. And it really wasn't a big deal. And I guess that other people didn't have that same kind of reaction.
Well, so I think some people aren't very comfortable with making felt to, being made to feel a little like, oh, I wish I had known better. But there were a number of moments for me in Dread where I thankfully, like I said previously on previous episodes, I'm glad I was streaming, because there were a couple times in the game where I had no idea where to go, but once I figured it out or someone told me, I was like, oh, duh, like so obvious. I think that was one of those rooms for me. I think I did pretty much the same thing you did, but I mean that's part of the Metroid experience. I think you figure it out, or you run around and then you eventually figure out and you're like, come on, bro, like what are you doing? So like that's part of it. And honestly, I think that guy was just making a big deal out of really nothing. There's
so got him a lot of attention.
It certainly did. Like honestly, there are so many other things you could complain about in this game that is certainly not even remotely on the top of my list. Even if even if I did consider it to be an issue, which I don't. So I don't vividly remember getting stuck. You can check the VODs on my Twitch. I don't particularly remember getting stuck for very long, but I'm pretty sure I did what you did. I kind of was like, oh, what do I do? I circled back eventually. I shot the ceiling. And I was like, oh, come on, Dak. Dude, you're playing a Metroid game. You should know better. And then I moved on with my life.
I just love that, like, the room and everybody knows what she's talking about.
Metroid Prime 4 should have the room. I want a room that's shaped exactly the same. You have to shoot the ceiling. A nice homage to the best room in Metroid.
This might be the best username in Metroid. Chunky Beef Bomb has a great question.
Okay.
So Chunky asks, you're gonna like this. Was Raven Beak ever in collaboration with Mother Brain?
Oh my
Did
God.
he and the Makin tribe provide Metroid larva to the space pirates on Zebes and Talon 4? No.
I mean, now at this point, I have no idea how like any power structure works in Metroid. To be really honest, I don't think so. I definitely don't think Raven Beak had literally anything to do with the Chozo on Talon 4. Which, again, that was kind of my thing with Dread, where I was like, I felt like there were mad Chozo, like, all over the place, separated in many tribes. And I think Dread kind of makes it seem like there are just two tribes, the good Chozo and the evil Chozo.
See, I've heard you say that, and I heard someone else say that. But I actually didn't get that vibe at all. I just, like, my interpretation was, like, these are just two tribes of Chozo among many tribes of Chozo. So I never got that impression. I mean, because we already knew that, like, the Chozo, on Talon 4 were there. We knew that they came to Aether eventually, obviously on SR 388. So, yeah, I never got that vibe. But, it's obvious that the Chozo that were on Talon brought the Metroids to Talon for some reason. Or maybe there is a reason that Metroid Prime gives, and I just can't remember. But the only reason that the Metroids were on Zebes is because, the Space Pirates took them there. So
yeah, I mean, let's all be honest here, folks. Raven Beak didn't. That's the final version of him, by the way. Raven Beast, the Kraid version. That's what we call him. Yeah. I mean, let's be honest. Raven Beak didn't exist in Metroid until this game. Like literally, like like in the story or world of Metroid. Like they can say all they want, but Raven Beak did not exist until Dread, and there didn't have any influence on anything else besides what they said in Dread specifically. So, I mean, I don't know. My interpretation from Dread, I felt like they homogenized the Chozo into like these two tribes because they didn't mention any other ones. Like no other Chozo had any influence on any of this. It was just these two. Like I don't believe that. So, I mean, I guess that's the case, but I don't know. After what I learned from previous Metroid games, I always got the feeling that it was that there weren't like two major tribes that would have that much influence, and none of the other tribes had any influence on any of the Metroid games. It was just these two, and then I guess the ones in Prime, but they're not the ones in Dread, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, I don't think Raven Beak had anything to do with anything except what they said he was involved in Dread.
All right, well, let's move on to a question from Focused Wombat. Wombat asks, with Mercury Steam moving on to other franchises, what studio/developer would you like to see hired for the next 2D Metroid installment?
Are they moving on to other franchises? That's the first I've heard of that.
So I do remember reading a report a couple months ago that Mercury Steam was developing another game and that it was for the PlayStation 5. Um, but I don't think that just because they're developing a game for the PlayStation 5 that completely excludes them from doing more 2D Metroid games. Especially now that they have the engine for 2D Metroid games for the Switch. I feel like that was probably the biggest like legwork of the project was just getting that engine. So I mean I look, I feel like the Metroid Dread is going to be so successful that the thought of Nintendo doing another 2D Metroid that doesn't involve Mercury Steam right now seems unfathomable to me. I can't imagine them saying to like, Mercury Steam like, thanks, but we're gonna give the reins to Level 5 or Next Level Game or whoever did Federation Force now, right? Like,
jeez.
I think that if Mercury Steam is unavailable for a period of, let's say, 2 years, then maybe we just don't get 2D Metroid for 2 years until they are available again, right? So, but that being said, I do think that just because they're working on a game for the PlayStation 5 doesn't mean that they are excluded from doing a new 2D Metroid. We heard on Kiwi Talks, Chris Wicken was saying that he, like, 4 people made Metroid Prime Trilogy, right? And obviously not the same thing, but it's not, I guess what I'm saying is, just because they're moving on to other franchises doesn't potentially exclude them from working on Metroid. And I wouldn't be surprised if like Nintendo wasn't just like, all right, we're going to buy up a piece of Mercury Steam just to like, really solidify this relationship. Because it does kind of feel reminiscent of like early 2000s when Nintendo went and bought Retro, or when they went and bought Silicon Knights, or that kind of, deal. So
yeah,
I think that there's some similarities there.
I mean, I think because, we already knew before Dread was coming out that they planned on more 2D Metroids beyond Dread. I don't think they would have said that if they didn't plan on having Mercury Steam involved, because I just don't think that they have this engine, they have a developer behind Metroid, they're going to keep using that connection, that what they've set up, And if you follow Metroid, or if you follow Mercury Steam on Twitter, you already know that Mercury Steam already has another game that they work on, I think for PC and Xbox and PlayStation, some sci-fi like MMO-ish loot shooter kind of game or whatever it is. I forget the name of it off the top of my head. But that game's been out since before Dread came out, and they've been supporting it and working on it through the development of Dread and through the launch and post-launch. They're not only working on Metroid already, so I don't see why them working on another game or franchise, whatever, would change anything. They're already working on non-Metroid stuff while doing Metroid as well. So it wouldn't actually change anything at all. I would assume that, anyone who works on something for a while, they want to do something new. They want to do something different maybe the next time. So I wouldn't be surprised if part of Mercury Steam is working on something else. But absolutely, I would imagine that they're also planning the next Metroid if they haven't already started development on it. That said, I definitely can see another studio also doing 2D Metroids, but I don't see why they would do that if they have Mercury Steam right there who just put out Dread. Like, I'm assuming they're going to try to get them to do more Metroid, at least another 2D Metroid, before maybe they want to work on something else, but it shouldn't stop them from working on another 2D Metroid just because they want to work on something else. They're already doing that.
Yep, I agree. All right. New Supreme Man has a good question. Would you guys be open to a podcast episode or episodes where you go over community-submitted Metroid pitches and talk about what you like and dislike about them? Well, yes, I would be open to that, but I do have a recommendation for you, my friend. So Dak and I both were guests on a podcast called the Phazon Labs, which is run by our friends over at World 11 Podcast and Isabel, aka Metroid 35, and we pitched some Metroid ideas of our own. And I think that that's like pretty much the whole gimmick of the show is like people come on and they pitch ideas for a Metroid game, and you just kind of talk about what you like, what you don't like, etc., how it could work feasibly. So I think that you would be I think that you would dig that show, because I think that is kind of what you're asking for.
Yep, already exists. Check out Phazon Labs because they do a great job doing exactly what you're looking for. So there you go.
Make sure that you go to Metroid Splinter Cell. That's the best episode, I think.
Is that the one you're on?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, you're right. It's better than my episode.
Wow. Oh, okay. No, you know what? I liked your episode, actually. I liked your idea for Federation Force. I would play that game. Okay. Papa Rick is in the house. What do you
Hey.
think of the hint butterflies, as I call them? Do you think they did their job to help guide the player? So this is kind of an interesting question because in my first playthrough, I didn't really notice them, and like they. So for anybody unfamiliar with what Rick's talking about, there are like these luminescent butterflies that just kind of fly around everywhere, and they're in various parts of ZDR, and I guess that they try and point you in the right direction of like rooms that you need to go. I didn't really notice that, and then towards the end of my first playthrough, and definitely my second playthrough, I did notice them kind of popping up here and there, and I wondered if there was any like reason that they were there. Like, you know, when you play Zelda and sometimes you see like the three butterflies flying around, like you're just like, oh, I should play the Song of Storms or something like that, right? Like I kind of got similar vibes to that, but I never I don't know, I never really there is no Song of Storms to play, so it's not something that you instinctively do. But so I guess in that way they didn't necessarily do their job, but I kind of like the idea of maybe something environmental, you know, giving you a hint of maybe go here.
I don't think it's a bad idea at all. I think it's, I'm not the most like observant person clearly because I did not even remotely notice that the first time I played the game. Um, but I think it's a great idea. I think because Metroid Dread introduced as fundamentally introduces so much, both for a like so many new things, both for a new Metroid fan, for an old Metroid fan, that like something very subtle like this I think maybe gets missed because there are so many new things that players are getting like used to that are not subtle, that are very explicit, and it's and are more abundant in number, that something smaller like this might get passed on because you're spending so much time working with the new stuff you haven't experienced yet. So like I was one of those people. I had no idea. I honestly, even the second time I played it, I did notice them, but I didn't at all put two and two together and be like, oh, these might actually be helpful. I was, again, kind of distracted. So I think overall it's a good idea. And maybe they needed to be a bit less subtle so they would be more effective because, to be honest, I'd say a majority of people would have no idea that they're even there or serve some kind of purpose besides being aesthetically pleasing. So I think a great idea, but maybe because it's such a new game, needed to be a bit less subtle for new players and for people like me who, don't have too many wrinkles in their brain and need a little bit more help.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the Prime series still did it the best, where like you have the notification essentially that's just like, hey, check out this room, and even if you've
Yep.
never been to that room before, if it's not even on your map or anything, you can go there, and if you don't like that, you can just turn it off. So I think that I wasn't a big fan in Zero Mission of like the Chozo statues kind of explicitly doing that, but yeah, I think the Prime series does it the best. But yeah, I do like the idea of these hint butterflies, but maybe could have been a bit less subtle for sure.
I think it works really well in Prime too, because you get like other notifications as well through your suit. Like just notices of like environmental things going on or stuff from your ship. So it plays really well into that. Whereas like there isn't a similar system, I think, that like kind of complements or mimics that butterfly thing. So it doesn't, like, you wouldn't expect to do that. Whereas like you're already getting those messages in Prime. So after you wander around for like 20 minutes, you have no idea where to go, and the suit's like, hey, all right, like here's a little help. I think it makes like it's more natural in those games. So yeah, I don't think it's a bad idea, but I think maybe it could have been executed a bit differently.
The only thing I'll add to that is I will say that I like that they're there, and I think that in Metroid 6, if these butterflies are again present, then we'll kind of start to know and like speak that language a little bit. Like I mentioned Zelda earlier with like the flying three butterflies. Like now I can play a Zelda game I've never played for the first time. I see three butterflies and I'm like, oh man, I better check out over here. So I think that if they keep on putting these into new Metroid games, then the player will kind of subliminally start to put that together and say like, okay, there's something of interest in this next room where these butterflies are. So yeah, it wasn't done, maybe as well as it could have been, but I think that it was good that they were there because like now you can build on it.
Yeah,
So.
I agree. I think like it might be part execution, but I think it's just part of like the fact that it's the first time in these games. Now that the expectation will come, I think it would be fine. Yeah, like you said in the next ones.
This is a great question. I actually didn't put this together until Russ suggested it. But our buddy Russ says, do you think that the Emmy were inspired by Mr. X in Resident Evil 2? While the SAX and Fusion was more scripted encounters, the Emmy works more similarly to Mr. X. First of all, Resident Evil 2, one of the great, maybe the greatest 3D Metroidvania. So good. But, I don't know. Maybe kind of, in a way, but, I guess the similarities is that, like, Mr. X kind of follows you in a more random pattern. But the thing about Mr. X is, like, you can just, like, run away from him so easily, and you're never really in danger of getting caught unless you, like, really get yourself in a bind. Like, there's usually always a way to get away from Mr. X. Whereas in Metroid Dread, the Emmy is frequently hot on your tails, and he's going to kill you for sure, and at least at a couple points of this game. So yeah, I don't know. I can see the similarities, but I more so think that it's kind of like the evolution of the SAX concept rather than like inspired by Mr. X. Yeah. But I could see it.
Yeah, I think there are certainly similarities, but I don't think there was a necessarily a direct inspiration, because there are a lot of things that in video games that chase you in similar ways, not just Mr. X, And I mean, a big part of Metroid Dread's development history was how they weren't able to execute apparently the Emmy concept until now, which really kind of tells you that the SAX likely would have been implemented the same way had they been able to, like it was scripted, sure, but it was back in, the early 2000s, right? Like if the SAX existed now
on the Game Boy Advance, no less.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was more, I think they would have done more had they been able to, but they were limited by the technology. That's why it's more of a scripted encounter. But had Metroid Fusion come out today, it would likely be like the Emmys, right? Or like Mr. X or whatever. So I agree. It's definitely a natural evolution of what they wanted to do, but couldn't do until now or whatever, rather than being a direct influence from a pretty popular character, but I wouldn't say like one that necessarily immediately influences Metroid.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, also, by the way, before you go on, best 3D Metroidvanias, obviously DK64. Continue.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew it. I'm not going to argue either, by the way. I love Donkey Kong 64.
Love it.
Someone was asking, by the way, if we were going to do an Inspired by Metroid on Donkey Kong 64. We'll definitely do it.
That and Prey. At some point. Those are the ones I want to do. Prey and Donkey Kong 64. Prey was another suggestion by someone I forget off the top of my head, but thank you to that person.
Yeah, that's I played like an hour of it, and it was really fun, but I don't know what it was. I just put it down, and maybe I got distracted by something else. But now that I have like a reason to play Prey. Mm-hmm. I think that it certainly was very fun for the time that I played it. But all right, one last question here. This one's kind of fun. This is from Big Griff. He asks, if Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion got a remake one day, what do you think they will be called, or what do you think they should be called, and what do you think Nintendo will actually call them? I kind of like this question, because like I hate getting remake, like Link's Awakening for the Nintendo Switch. I hated that it was called Link's Awakening for the Nintendo Switch. I wanted it to be called like Link's Reawakening, or like something to differentiate it. And I think that Metroid is really good at doing that, because like you got Zero Mission, you got Samus Returns. Even if it's like literally goes from Return of Samus to Samus Returns, at least it's something different.
Yeah.
I don't know. Metroid Fusion X. I mean, Metroid.
That's 100% what it would be. Or Metroid X. So? Metroid X, I think I could see it being. Or for Super Metroid, new Super Metroid. How about that?
Oh,
How do you feel about new Super Metroid or new Metroid Fusion? Those are winners right there.
Oh god.
I think Metroid X is probably what it would be. Or
I think Metroid X Fusion.
X Fusion cool. Or Refusion or I don't know. Yeah. Super Metroid, I don't know how they would do that. I think they would just call it like Super Metroid Remake or something.
I don't know.
I don't know. I have no idea what Ultra Metroid.
I could actually be kind of down with that.
That's a title right there. Maybe not even for a remake, but Ultra Metroid. That sounds hype.
I have to say that Super Metroid is like one of my favorite games ever. But one thing that I actually hate about Super Metroid,
I know you're going with that.
Is that it's called Super Metroid. It's the only game of the series that doesn't.
So
it's
cool.
not called Metroid something.
Yeah, change it up a little bit. It sounds so cool. I love how it's so distinctive and it sounds awesome. Super Metroid. Like it's not everything has to be Metroid, whatever. Super Metroid. Give me Ultra Metroid.
I like the consistency. I like that. I didn't.
Oh,
like
you
when,
like the consistency here, but you don't ask where the animals are. Got it.
Well, the animals are at Samus's house. We already answered that question. They're fine. Ultra Metroid, yeah, that could be Ultra Super Metroid.
All right, that's a little because now we're just stacking names. I don't think it needs to be
calling
Ultra
it New Super Metroid.
New Super Metroid.
God,
it rolls off the tongue, my man.
That would be just the absolute worst if they did that. I don't know. If you have a good suggestion for what the Super Metroid remake should be called, let us know. And you can answer Super Metroid or Super Metroid remake. Those options are off the table. So yeah, let us know. That is the end of our questions. We didn't get quite all of them, but we got almost all of them. Thank you so much for all of the great questions and comments and thoughts and everything like that. This was a lot of fun, and I had a blast answering all these questions. And I feel like, within these questions, there is inspiration for at least a couple full-blown episodes here. So thank you to our Omega Metroid community. You guys brought it this week when we asked for questions, as you guys always do. So thank you very much.
I was going to say, I love doing these episodes. We always get great questions, and I feel like we have a great discussion trying to come up with some answers. So I love doing these. And I also love that even though we did have a good amount of Metroid Dread questions, like you said, it was a mix from all the games. And I love talking about Metroid in general, so it was nice to talk about Dread, but also talk about some Metroid Prime 4, some remakes and whatnot. And yeah, we got to go back to this episode and the other Q&As and see what we can scrounge together for some episode topics, because there's a lot of good stuff in here. So yeah, thank you all for sending us questions. It means a lot that you'll even tune in, but you interact with us and chat with us and send us questions means a lot and makes it worthwhile. So thank you very much.
Yep, couldn't have said it better myself. All right, well, we're going to get out of here. Thank you again, everybody, for sending the questions and for listening. We encourage you guys to go and head on over to Twitter, at Omega Metroid Pod, at Spiteri316, and at DaxCity_. Give us a follow. And give us a follow over on Podbean, iTunes, Spotify. You know the drill, wherever you get your podcast. Like and subscribe. Tell that Metroid fan in your life where they can get their weekly Metroid fix. Until next week, everybody, we will see you then.